So, welcome everybody to our call for April, which is a little bit mad. It's supposedly spring, although I'm pretty sure it snowed yesterday, so struggling to believe that one, but apparently so. So, welcome everybody to the call. Linda, welcome. We've got 8 of you on the call. I'm sure there'll be many more joining us as we go through this introduction. For those of you who might be on the call for the first time, a reminder that we do mute people on the call from time to time if there is background noise, purely to allow those speaking to be heard. So if you are muted, you'll know that your microphone icon will be orange. If you're in a noisy place, particularly if you're joining us using a mobile phone, quite often the background noise is quite bad with mobile phones. Please do mute yourself. If you're on a phone, it's *6. And then if you want to speak, *6 to unmute yourself once again. And for those of you on laptops and computers, you've got your little circular icon of a microphone up at the top of the screen, which is green, meaning you can be heard. And again, orange if you are muted. So just clicking on that icon to unmute and mute. And as I say, we'd much appreciate if when you're not speaking, just to make sure you're muted so that everybody can hear our speaker at the time. So I'm going to share my screen. If anybody can't see my screen, obviously if you're on a phone, you won't be able to see it. But for those of you on desktops, I am going to share my screen. And please do let me know if you can't see. I'm actually doing this on a new computer for the first time, so bear with me. Can everybody see what's on my screen?
Yep.
Fan-dabby-dozy. Good stuff. All right. So, as I say, recording this call as usual for those of you who might be missing it. So please do catch up if you aren't able to join us this evening. Apart from introductions and welcomes, as we usually do, if there's anybody on the call for the first time this evening, it'd be great to just take a minute and introduce yourself to everybody else on the call. Otherwise, we will get on with the agenda for this evening. The lottery project, Sam, I know you've just been speaking about that with Anthony before we started the call. So just updating you all on where we're at with that project. Many of you might have been on a brainstorming teleconference call just last week with Sam and Anthea, looking at ideas for that development stage funding project. But for those of you who perhaps haven't engaged with it just yet, we would love to hear of any of your ideas. So we'll talk about that a little bit in just a moment. We'll then look at some updates that we have, the Wave team have to share with you, particularly looking at our cross-party group in Holyrood, up here in Edinburgh, and also down in Westminster, our recent launch of the APPG on the prevention of ACEs. And I know, Sam, that you guys have now had 2 meetings for that APPG. So again, just looking at updating you on that. And a reminder that we will be adding all ambassadors to mailing lists to receive news and updates on both of those parliamentary groups. But for whatever reason, if anybody would rather not get those updates, then of course do let us know. But automatically you will be added to that mailing list. Fundraising, we'll then be looking at how we as a network can fundraise for 7030 in 2018. And we have mentioned this in the last couple of calls, but we have a really exciting opportunity to take part in this year's Charity Walk for Peace. Many of you will know, and some of you will have participated in last year's Charity Walk for Peace. So again, this year, at the end of this month, in fact, we have the opportunity to join in that really fun and rewarding day out. And Sam's going to talk a little bit about that. And just very briefly looking at the newly launched section on our website dedicated to fundraising. And if anybody has any questions or any ideas of how they would like to fundraise this year for 7030, then now is the time to share them and we can add those to the website. And then, of course, we'll be ending with details of our next call. Guest speaker joining us for next month's call, a really fantastic speaker who I know you'll all want to meet and listen to speaking. And we're also going to end this evening's call with a really important TED Talk delivered by one of our senior fellows, Sir Harry Burns, which is a talk we don't want you missing out on. So I'm going to end the call on that note. Before we go on to the big lottery, is there anybody on the call for the first time this evening who would like to take a moment to introduce themselves?
Hi, I'm Judy.
Hi,
Can you hear me,
Judy.
Sarah? Hi. Hi. Yeah, I came across the 70/30 campaign after I had already started to promote AIDS awareness in Manchester and also in Warrington. So I'm very new to what the 70/30 organisation is all about, but I'm doing my bit to promote AIDS awareness, people to become attachment wise and trauma informed.
Fantastic. And Judy, you are the founder of Emotion Focus, is that correct?
Yeah. Emotion Focus was really the title of an initiative that I set up um, 2.5 years ago because I had been invited to take part in the Victoria Derbyshire show on the state of the nation's mental health. And the purpose of my being there in that programme was to, at the end, there was supposed to be a discussion about, well, what do we do now about the state of the nation's mental health? And my message was going to be, if we stop focusing on mental health and start focusing on emotional health and well-being, then we might start to reduce the stigma against about mental ill health. As it turned out, the programme didn't go according to plan, so I never got to say that. So I just decided off my own back that I would do my own thing. And so I set up Emotion Focus, which is separate to my business, which is I'm a psychotherapist and I'm also an executive and business coach. So Emotion Focus was just to get the message out there that we could be training teachers or making teachers aware of how to identify children that are experiencing adverse conditions, and we could be talking to businesses about how to focus on emotional health and stop banging on about mental ill health, and the reasons for doing that. So that's what that was about, really.
Fantastic.
I would just pitch in, Sarah, and say I know we spoke. You bring a lot of really exciting ideas, and really delighted to have you on board.
Thank you, Sam.
Yeah, I would second that. And it's fantastic to have another ambassador in Manchester. We've got a fantastic group building in Manchester, so it's really exciting to have you on board, Judy. Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome, Judy.
Thank you. I have to add that I'm more the ambassador for Warrington South, which is outside of Manchester. I do work in Manchester, but I live and work in Warrington as well.
Noted. Okay, so going on to our big lottery project, funding project, I'm going to actually let Sam talk a little bit about this because I think he's been slightly more involved than I have in terms of the brainstorming session that some of you will have been involved with last week, whether it was through the teleconference phone call that they hosted or actually going into the office yourself in person. I know a few people went into the Croydon office and sat with George and Sam and Anthea and had that brainstorming session. I've put a couple of questions, or one question really, up on the screen for you guys to have a little think about. And I actually want to share with you a short video, which I found earlier on today. And some of you may have seen it. I posted it on the Facebook closed group. But for those of you who haven't, I think it gives great food for thought, and it provides a really fantastic example of one area, i.e. schooling, where trauma-informed practice can really be put into practice and really demonstrates the fantastic and quite influential role that schools have and that they play in having trauma-informed communities take off. So I'm going to show that video, but actually before that, Sam, if you wanted to talk a little bit about how your brainstorming sessions had gone and what ideas had come from that.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. How long do you want to give me?
10 minutes.
5 minutes?
Well, I'm thinking if we allow people to maybe share some ideas themselves as well, if everybody wants to have a wee think while Sam's speaking.
Have a wee think, and I'll try to take about 5, so there's a bit more time for people to throw in their thoughts. If anyone's wondering why I'm all red, by the way, I've got a bit of a cold and it's water vapor. I'm not sort of got any horrible skin disease. I've just been inhaling water vapor and eucalyptus oil. So right. So this is such a great little project. It's because it's not really us doing the work, it's you guys, which I have a strong preference for at all times. And one of the reasons that I like this is that the richness and diversity of ideas coming out of all of you is really what's the word? It's incredible. There's so much. You could already fill a book with all the ideas that have come out of people. They range from health, schools, sport, drama, pets, just, you know, amazing diversity of ideas. And I think while we're writing up a development proposal at the moment, and I'm going to talk in a minute about what that means, I'm hearing some echo, so if you've got your mic on and there's an echo, just stick yourself on mute there. We've got a kind of ongoing process, and I'm really keen to say, if you have a thought or an idea, just pop it over in an email, even if it's just a really scruffy kind of type on the phone, zip off. Just keep sending the thoughts, keep sending the ideas. As I mentioned earlier, I think one of my favorite ideas actually came from a conversation that I had earlier today, and I think that we can still find more great ideas. So, quick recap on what we're doing. George had a meeting with the Big Lottery. The Big Lottery said to him that they're very interested in this suddenly rather covered topic of ACEs. Now, I like to think that there's a kind of, I don't know if anyone else can feel it, feels like a change in the wind, that actually ACEs seem to be talked about a little bit in a way that, you know, I've noticed it on the news, I've noticed various conversations that actually early years is, I think if we put the message out there, there are a lot of listening ears for this stuff. And Big Lottery certainly feel that they want to do a trauma-informed project. They want to take ACEs and they want to do something significant and substantial on it. What they want to do is they want to run a project that sees a number of community-led trauma-informed communities. Now, community, that all sounds waffly, but it really does mean, and Big Lottery really mean this, it really does mean you guys coming up with ideas that you guys can then create. They don't want to see a big organization do something corporate. They want communities to think of ideas. And what's really nice about talking with Siobhan about sports clubs and, you know, and with Andy about with Anthony about dad's groups and with Andy about year 11s and the rest of it, is that if this is the stuff that will succeed. If we do get this opportunity, it's this kind of stuff that will succeed. We've collated 18 pages now of ideas, which has been mind-numbing, and there's been some repetition, but a lot of freshness and a lot of different areas of public life, as I mentioned. Interestingly, not that much on health, and not that much on politicians. Maybe we've just got you guys all so sick of politicians that you don't want to hear local councillor or MP and you just go away, don't talk about politicians. A lot of stuff on schools, a lot of stuff on the wider community, which actually we were perhaps lacking before in our conversation. Very little on the police. Okay, anyone who's interested in the police, pull your finger out. So I want to encourage people to keep sending in ideas. We have done an initial costings exercise, which I believe Aidan is still battling on within the office, which we have about a £50,000 ceiling in how much we can do in terms of developing ideas, and that really falls away into small bits of money when you think, you know, I counted a dozen, actually I counted 13 dozen, 13, a baker's dozen, 13 different people in different areas with ideas. I may not have counted you, so, you know, again, if you've got thoughts, do approach. I'm not sure quite what else to say, so I think I'm just going to let you guys guide me with questions.
Hi, Sam, it's Linda. I just wanted some guidance on timescales.
Okay, I can give very specific guidance, and thank you, Linda. That's exactly where I should go next. The first phase of this project is to tell them what we think we could do. And to do that, we are applying for development funding. The development funding will allow us to do things like maybe buy another couple of copies of Resilience, maybe produce some more leaflets, give you guys some support to do all the things, because if we're asking you to do stuff intensively, then in some cases, you know, that you're going to really be, there's some ideas that will take hours and hours and days and days. Research, focus groups, all that stuff, the timescale is kind of now, yesterday. It really is now, yesterday. Please do, and specifically what I mean by that is specific proposals for what you would do to flesh out your ideas. Here's an example. I'm going to go down the road there. I'm going to talk to my local library. I'm going to say, look, I'm interested in having a table, a stall. I know you had one on mental health. They did. That's a true story. That really happened. Can you do one on ACEs? That, my investment of time as an ambassador, my research, any engagement with Wave, that sort of stuff. That's the thing we want to know now, yesterday. Is that crystal clear? If it's not, I'll say it in a different way. So that is now. We're looking at April, May, June, pulling all these ideas and putting flesh on bones and growing thoughts into more weighty community initiatives that could actually happen. You know, where there are names and where there are names of community groups and names of streets and schools, and, you know, where we're really on the rails. The next bit will come after June. There'll be a big old proposal in September, and that's where it all gets kind of crunchy, and we either get a huge pot of funding to do amazing things and we all have a big party and it's very exciting and revolutionary, or we all get slightly disappointed and then console ourselves and all the rest of it. Yeah. Who's next?
Is there any patterns to how the lottery process things? Do they have a tendency to have a certain criteria that has to be ticked?
Yeah.
How broad is that, or should we, in order that we all kind of, you know, point our compass all in the right direction?
Yeah, good shout, good shout. One, it's yours to design. If there's even a whiff of centralized, they won't like it. This is not one for big charities. This is one for you guys. You own this. I can't say that enough times. You own this. And by the way, the ideas you've come up with through owning this so far have been exceptional. So I think they might be right on that. Two, they want to see, because it's Big Lottery have Big Lottery UK, Big Lottery England, Scotland, etc. This is a Big Lottery United Kingdom project. And that means the whole thing. So we do need to reach, you know, yes, the heartlands of England, Anthony, but also anyone who's there in Scotland, anyone who's there in Northern Ireland, anyone who's there in Wales. We really need to be hearing from you as well. The Republic of Cornwall, you know, it really needs to be more than just the M25.
Mm-hmm.
That's about it.
Mm. Got it.
What else? I think, yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Please.
It's Judy. So if it's including Wales, Scotland, Northern Ireland, whatever, then how is this different from what Wales and Scotland are already doing?
The short and slightly snooty answer is talk is cheap. The slightly longer answer, but by that I mean that there's a lot of good talk in Scotland and Wales. There are less full community initiatives than talk. I'm just being really blunt about that. The second thing is that this is a personal opinion, a disclaimer, this is my personal opinion. I do not believe 70/30 will succeed through central political initiatives. I believe it will only succeed if those initiatives and that funding are owned by local communities. I know it's a cliched thing to say, but think about it. Think about how are you going to get people to buy in? I can see, Judy, you're nodding there. You get this. You know this world really well, don't you? You know it probably thousands of times better than I do at this point. It has to be grounded in the communities. I'll say one other thing. I was reading an Economist article about the schools stuff. You know, the schools, all the different thousands of different types of schools you can have nowadays in England. So for all its faults, and there may be many, one thing that a diverse system of different ideas does is it shows you what works and what works in different places. And I think that's also really exciting about this project. The diversity of it will be a real learning exercise.
Great. Okay, what I'm going to do is just share this video. As I say, it's only a couple of minutes long. It does focus in on a school, and it's America. So it's not a UK school, although I know there are now more and more, particularly primary schools in the UK, that are starting to look at trauma-informed schooling and how to bring that into their own premises. So it is happening in the UK. It's starting to happen in the UK, I should say. But what I think this video will do, perhaps, is, as I say, leave you with some food for thought, and it may spur on some extra ideas, particularly for those of you who are maybe learning about this project for the first time. Any other questions, we can of course deal with them after the film, and if not, please do email Sam or I at any point with your ideas or with any questions that might come to you after this video. Okay. I'm assuming everybody can see my screen still.
Yeah, that's fine. So.
Yeah, great, fantastic, thank you.
Yeah, fine.
This is Sam's class. Students gather in a circle, write their feelings, identify agents of change.
Sound is very dodged, can't hear nothing.
What's that, sorry, Anthony?
It's breaking up. It's not actually giving any narration or anything.
Oh, you can't hear. Is everybody the same? Can nobody hear? Everyone else the same, I'm assuming.
Nothing at all on sound.
Oh dear.
Okay. It's like the stream is,
it's buffering.
Yeah, buffering, that's the word.
Okay, well, I don't want to do is eat into lots of time. So what I'll do instead is put it into the email with the minutes of the call. And as I say, it is well worth a watch. It certainly gives a fantastic example of how schools can play that role in a trauma-informed community. So do have a little look at it. It's a shame that we couldn't show it this evening, but as I say, I wouldn't want it to eat into too much time. Okay, does anyone else, before we move on, does anyone have any questions or thoughts on that particular project?
Sarah, in Dumfries and Galloway, there's a very good programme run by Abalour. And do you know them?
I don't know.
Okay, so the Abalour Children's Charity, they got a grant from the Scottish Government a few years ago, and they implemented Parents as First Teachers. But also, it seems to me that they are the kind of people who respond very creatively to local need. I won't go into all the things they've done, but if you were looking for people who I think do have, they are in touch with grassroots, even if they may not be seen to be grassroots themselves, that they would be very good people. I can email you them. It's Dumfries and Galloway Family Outreach from Abalour.
Please do email that. That'd be great.
Yeah.
Okay.
Please do, Janice. Thank you so much.
Because I certainly think that they're doing the action and not just talking the talk there.
Great. No, it's always really helpful to, particularly when the UK, but anywhere really. There's so many examples, as I say, in America as well, and just to have some clear examples of how it's done well, obviously spurs us on. So thank you for that. Okay, quite briefly, because I realise that we are already halfway through the call. Cross-party group on the prevention and healing of adverse childhood experiences. That's the proposed name for the cross-party group on ACEs that we launched in Holyrood in Scottish Parliament just a few weeks back. Attendance was fantastic. We had about 25 people there on the day, including 9 or 10 MSPs. So a really fantastic turnout in that way. And we also had a couple of ambassadors join us, a couple of our Glasgow ambassadors join us for the day. Gail Ross, MSP for Caithness, she led the cross-party group and is the proposed convener for that group. She's very keen in particular to get a Pioneer Communities project or something to that effect off the ground up north in Scotland in the Caithness area. And for those of you that watched the debate on ACEs, which was also led by Gail Ross, you'll have heard her speak about that and propose that to the Scottish Government in her opening speech. So she's particularly committed to seeing a project go off the ground in Caithness. But many of the other MSPs were also incredibly supportive. Alex Cole-Hamilton is taking a key role also in the cross-party group. Treasurer, Secretariat, Wave Trust were proposed as a secretariat. And I say proposed because slightly different process up here in Scotland. The first meeting is technically not the first meeting, it's called a proposed meeting. And really anything that's discussed and agreed amongst the group members are proposed arrangements. So there's a process by which Gail has now had to submit that proposal for the group, and those arrangements will have to be passed before they're official. So as of yet, nothing is technically official, but certainly we're incredibly confident and hopeful that things will go ahead as planned. And as I say, we've had so many other MSPs who weren't able to join us on that day for the first meeting tell us that they will be there for the next, and very keen to learn what we discussed at that particular meeting. So we're really very, very confident about what the future holds for that group. We will be sharing minutes, we'll be sharing updates and notifications on all of our future meetings. I think we're looking at quarterly meetings, so every 3 months. And as I say, ambassadors will be automatically added to the mailing list. So you will have updates sent through to your inbox as and when meetings take place. And similarly in Westminster, we know that there was the APPG on the prevention of adverse childhood experiences, a slightly different name down in Westminster. but a similar group in terms of its ambitions. And of course, we know that that group launched in Westminster last month, slightly ahead of the Scotland parliamentary group, and have now had their second meeting. And Sam, I wonder whether you might want to say a few words on how that meeting went and what was discussed.
Very good meeting, second meeting. I think about the same actually, as almost exactly the same as yours in terms of turnout. So we discussed ACEs and youth justice in this meeting. Several ambassadors again turned up. We had some very good suggestions from Tory, Labour, crossbench, and Liberal Democrat on how they'd like to do things, and they're rearing to go. We've also had our papers in, which means that we're now official, which is very exciting. We are currently working with the co-chairs to set the next sort of number of dates in line and discussing topics to hold, and really it's a very strong group. I think what we're finding in both Scotland and Westminster is that demand for this is really high, and the challenge that I have in my mind, and I guess Sarah also has, is how to make sure that this really does get to the heart of it and not get diverted down these, prevention means age 8 or age 12 or these kind of diversionary roads. But yeah, really going really well. Next meeting will be subject to slight change, probably around the 24th of April, and that will be on perinatal mental health, and we're very much looking forward to that one. Yeah, that's
great. Thank you, Sam. Is there anybody who has any questions or comments to make on either of those groups before we move on to the next topic?
Yeah, on the Westminster APPG last week, there was a question asked. I can't remember, it might have been Ian Duncan Smith actually, but he was saying, what could government do for you? And that was a very interesting question, and it wasn't adequately answered at the time, other than to say more money, please. But I just wondered if that's, because that's quite a big question. I just wonder whether we all might give some thought to that. We've got the attention of government, it seems. What can they do for us?
Yeah, what I'd say, it was a very interesting comment. Ian Duncan Smith turned up. He's a long-term, he's actually a patron of Wave Trust, and spoke very strongly on the need to make it something that's not so long-term that it's not going to be in the political retirement of all the attendees. And he focused on schools. I think that there is going to be a call for us to be really specific about, we want this program and that program, and to an extent we need to kind of get away from that, because actually what's really important about 70/30 and about prevention is it needs to be a strategic approach. It cannot just be 2 or 3 or 4 policies and X number of millions of pounds into this or that. People say culture shift and things like that. It really does need to be a strategic thing. And so our challenge is also, yes, giving the evidence of a lot of different programs that do good things, but actually really getting MPs not only understanding but really fired up and passionate about the fact that if you want to do this, if you want to prevent ACEs, and you can prevent ACEs, and you can prevent harm, you have to do it strategically. You have to get to know the people who need your support. You have to have a really good kind of universal way of getting to people and giving them a relationship that is not based on the sort of slightly untrusting relationship that at times there is between vulnerable families and services. So I think it was a very interesting comment, and I think we will have a challenge to fire MPs up about doing the difficult strategic work that needs to be done to underpin the programmes. There you go. Nice comprehensive answer for you. Have we got time for another one on either Parliament?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Sam, I completely agree with you that you need strategic buy-in from the top. But I do think that the mapping that Aidan's doing and the bottom-up projects, I feel they can walk hand in hand. I wouldn't want to wait until we had a strategic approach before we did anything. So I think that mapping work is really good. And I had to look at the Dutch model that somebody mentioned when we were having a chat on Facebook, and they call it early detection. And for me, screening is a huge part of it, and that's a public health role. And I think Aidan mentioned something really interesting. Some of the Welsh health visitors are doing this project where they develop a relationship first and the screening happens naturally. And I really like the sound of that. So I kind of feel myself that I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, and if people have good initiatives, to say wait until we've got the whole strategy in place. I'm sure that's not your thinking anyway, but
yeah, I'll qualify. That's a good point, and I'll qualify that. The next meeting, as requested by Paul Williams, Dr. Paul Williams, who's the Labour co-chair, is going to be on a change, a fairly technical change to do with doctors, so that the perinatal mental health check is reliably done. In other words, to increase the perinatal mental health check, make sure it's done properly. And that is, as you say, exactly as you say, it is getting on with it. What's nice about that is that when people ask for programs, they often, what they mean, I think, a lot of the MPs in their heart of hearts is, you know, I think of Brighton, where there's a lovely charity, and particularly I think it's women only, come in with histories of drug abuse, and often they've been subject to violence, and they might in some cases not, you know, be homeless, and they'll have some kids taken away, and they'll be really, basically their lives are not good. They've really had the sharp end, and they're taken through a program which is very, very intensive and very caring, and talks about things like attachment, but also sees to the parents' mental health, and kind of draws their attention to things like the harm that, you know, this sort of project. These programs are great, but where you come across them very often in an area, these will be small local charities, local groups, doing a program for a very comparatively small number of the population. And while they're really important, and it will ultimately be important to get the right things in, it's really important. It's really important that this is not a tokenistic campaign, but a strategic campaign. And I'm completely agreeing with you, Linda. I'm completely agreeing with you. But it's not even but, and we know that the APPG's roles, the parliamentarians' roles, is to come up with a system that means that when this thing's rolled out, you know, it's going to help the population at large, not 1% or 2%. Is that? I'm completely agreeing with you, but I'm qualifying it. Does that make sense?
I think we're singing from the same hymn sheet, Sam. I think sometimes when politicians want to ask us for a way forward, I think it's useful to have some examples of how you would populate a strategy. So your overall aim would be the 70-30, and then you have maybe half a dozen objectives, and then you have some actions. So you have to have your overall aim and your objectives right first. But I think it gives them a better picture sometimes to have some sort of actions of how you would populate that whole strategy, just because they're, you know, they're just ordinary people, MPs, and sometimes they're interested in transport or other things, and you need to give them a picture in their mind.
Yeah. Well, both Linda and Mick, I take that thought back. I'll take that away and look afresh at the plans that we've got, because that's useful feedback.
I think something really refreshing that I found came out of our cross-party group meeting last week in Holyrood was that quite a few people attending, including some MSPs, really put forward the argument for having somebody with lived experience as a member of the APP, of the cross-party group, as a consistent member. I think Gail kind of proposed that we would have somebody with lived experience come and speak to everybody for one of our meetings, and then other MSPs and other attendees kind of came in and said, actually, how about we have somebody who is a member of the group and comes to each and every meeting, so that we have that perspective also being consistently fed in. And I think that also provides a really important angle where you have some tangible examples of where things aren't going right and where they are, and therefore what kind of concrete actions we can take forward. And I found that really quite positive coming from our meeting. Okie dokie, if nobody else has got anything, does anybody else have any questions on that, or any comments to make even before we move on?
No, all good.
No, fantastic. Okay, Charity Walk for Peace. I'm not going to give this too much time, in the sense that I know we have talked about it and many of you will be aware that we are holding it and perhaps just aren't able, for whatever reason, to sign up. But we are going to do what will be actually our final attempt at kind of bringing you all on board with this and encouraging you to sign up and get involved. As I said at the beginning of the call, the Charity Walk for Peace 2018 takes place in London, I believe it is, Sam, correct me if I'm wrong, on the 29th of this month, the 29th of April. Sam, you might know a little bit more than I do about the details, but certainly I know that you and some others, including Michael Kajunuri in Sussex, and friends, took part and had a really good day out. And as you'll see from the image on the screen, this is our fundraising page from last year, which we hosted with Just Giving, and it was really successful. We raised £740. The Charity Walk for Peace organisers actually fund match that, so that then doubles, and we raised just over 1,200. Please do correct me if I'm wrong, Sam, I'm going from memory here, but we raised around the 1,200, 1,300 mark, I believe, last.
Slightly more, actually.
Quite a bit.
They more than doubled it. They topped it up to 1,600 or something. They were quite generous.
So it's absolutely worth doing. And we know we've had a few conversations recently on these calls around the importance now really of the 70/30 network and supporters fundraising for 70/30 and providing support in that area, as well as the kind of grassroots lobbying. And so we really do encourage you to get on board if you are near the area, or if you can and want to make the trip, then please do. And as I say, there's not an awful lot of time left before it takes place. There's just under a month. So really, if you are signing up, please do that as soon as possible. There's a page on our website for the event where you can read a little bit more on it, and the kind of story behind the Charity Walk for Peace. And then there's a link to sign up and register for that walk with the organisers. And then, as we've done, hosting your own fundraising page makes absolute sense, and it's an easy and quick way to really focus people and get friends and colleagues, etc., funding and supporting through donations. So please do, if you can, get involved. Sam, is there anything you want to say on the event?
Yes, sorry, how long have I got?
5.
5, right. Give me a 1-minute warning, and I want to just take some response to this. So as Sarah said, they more than fun matched it. The walk is in Runnymede, which is a very pretty place just outside London. The fundraising page. Let's deal with this first. If just get in touch. Get in touch. If you're going to do the walk, just drop an email and say, I do the fundraising page. How do I do it? And I'll sort you out. So there you go. Promise. We've got possibly Pete from NAPAT, this lovely guy who is one of our guest speakers coming. A mate of mine is going to come again. I think Tony, one of the networkers, is likely to be coming. I'm tempted to come. Who else is coming? And I'll say one more thing. I'm going to set my own page up this week, because now is the perfect time to start fundraising. So I'm at the point of right now I've got sort of 2, 3, 4 weeks to just kind of call people and say, can you give a bit of money to charity, set up the page. Now is the time. Who's with me? Who's thinking of doing it? You're all tremendously welcome. Don't all shout. This is a great.
How many miles is it? What's the?
It's not. Let's have a look. I think it's about 6, 7, 8. It's not strenuous. It's kind of. It's like an extended stroll more than a serious hike. It's quite gentle, sort of late morning walk.
Okay, thank you.
You keen? I really have to. Yeah, I just think anyone who's thinking about it. Firstly, it's a lovely family day out. Secondly, I was that close to not doing it. So, just shout out. Just if you're thinking, don't step in it. Do step in it. It's a nice little day, and we do need some people to sign up. So, who's thinking about it? Give me a sense of where we are.
Sam, it's Linda. I can't walk at the moment, but I'll sponsor you.
You're very good, Linda. You're very good, Luke.
We're in contemplation because it's Tracy's. It's her birthday weekend, so we're just trying to sort of juggle,
Okay.
That sort of tradition. But we're on the fence, so we're going to have a conversation and have an arm wrestle over it and see whether we can step into it.
Can I absolutely urge you off the fence and tell you that if it were my birthday, I'd just love to go for a walk in Runnymede. It's a lovely little family event, and it ends. I think it ends early afternoon. So anyone who's thinking, do I go on the charity walk or do I go paintballing? Do both. Do both.
Somebody, I didn't quite catch who it was, but somebody's asked the question in the chat box of if it's at the end of April every year. Who was that?
Let's have a look. Judy.
It's Sarah,
Linda. Let's have a look. It's not. It was 14th of May last year. It's around this time every year. But the world might end in 2018. We might have Kim Jong-un and Putin and Trump all fighting it out. So, now's the time. Anyway, I've hammered the point home. I really want you all to come. If you can't come, for example, Julie, I know you're miles away up in Cheshire, not Manchester, which is completely fine. And Linda, I really appreciate what you're saying and appreciate the support. Get in touch, get on board. It's a lovely day out. That's me done. Over to you, Sarah.
And just a final point on that. If you can't come for whatever reason, please do take the opportunity to share it with friends and colleagues, because many of them may be able to and may want to. So if that's all that you do to support us with this, that would be much appreciated. And on that point, just before we move on, because I realise we're now 9 minutes before the call ends, we have launched the new section for the fundraising. I think Isabel spoke about it briefly on last month's call. But again, for those of you who perhaps aren't always visiting the website or weren't on last month's call, we have launched a full section on the website dedicated to fundraising activities. We have broken that down into 4 key sections. We've got community events, fundraising events, we've got schools, we've got corporates, and we've got challenge events for those nutters who want to do a skydive, for example. So there's loads of options out there. We've put together a fundraising pack, which you can download for free straight from the website. Otherwise, get in touch if for whatever reason you can't get on the website or you're not inclined and you'd rather send an email. I shall send it to you in an attachment. It's a full comprehensive fundraising pack. We've got an A to Z on ideas of what you can do within your communities, whether it be with work colleagues or friends or family or on your own even. So there's plenty of ideas, but we are always open to more. So if there's anything that you think of that you would like to do to raise funds for 7030, bear in mind, when the weather is good, chuckle is the time to do it. So spring, summer, this is the time of the year when we want to really be preparing ourselves for some fundraising events and get out there in our communities. And apart from raising funds, spread the word about 7030, which is what this is all about also. So please do take a look. And as I say, if it's not for yourself, then perhaps if you've got a child in school, they could do a baking sale, for example, or a movie night and raise funds that way. There's lots of creative ways that we can raise funds for a good cause. So please do take a look at that when you get a chance. Just to end on the call, next month we are going to be joined by one of our trustees, Jack Rowlands, who is a police officer in London. And Jack is very engaged with the work that we do, of course, as a trustee, but he really does go beyond, above and beyond all of the time. We're always just in awe of the wonderful work that he does. He's constantly spreading the message. And he's got some fantastic ideas, not just out in his wider community, but within his role as a police officer, how he can then share that message with his colleagues and get actions going forward with his police force. So we're going to have him join us next month for the call, and that really comes from Police Scotland and the Ayrshire division. They very recently, a couple of weeks back now, announced that they were going to become trauma informed. I've put a little snippet in there for you. There's a link to the full article. But the Chief Superintendent, Paul Main, has announced officially that the Ayrshire division will become a trauma informed division. I think 50% of the police force there have now seen the Resilience film, and the other 50% are being encouraged to watch it. And Superintendent Paul Main is facilitating those screenings, but beyond those screenings, he's now facilitating discussions and real action planning sessions around how they can take this forward on the ground and how they can transform the way that they police in Ayrshire to become trauma informed. And of course, we know the benefits of a trauma informed police force, and hopefully very soon we'll start to see that come about in Ayrshire and other parts of the UK. And as I say, with Jack and his absolute enthusiasm and commitment to trauma-informed care and to ACE awareness and to 7030, we have absolutely no doubt that he'll be taking that forward in his own area very soon. So a wonderful guest speaker and well worth coming on the call for that. Here's our very own Jack. And Jack also is very much linked to our Twitter activity and Facebook activity online. He's running a marathon actually in a couple of months' time for a fantastic cause. So do engage with him. And as I say, he has so many ideas and does so many wonderful things that we're not always aware of to raise awareness of Wave Trust's work and 7030. So a fantastic person to connect with if you're a social media or he's just fantastic. Before I show you the Sir Harry Burns TED Talk, which we're going to finish on this evening, I just wanted to make those of you who are not already aware aware that tomorrow evening I am hosting a training session on the Impact Tracker, on Makeable's Impact Tracker. I know that there are some of you who haven't yet received any training on the tool because you're very new to the network. But even for those of you who perhaps have received some training, I know there are a handful of you who are perhaps struggling with the tool, who don't feel quite confident yet using it on a regular basis. And I really want to get to the bottom of that and work through that with you because it's a really important tool. And also, it's hugely beneficial for the network as a whole, but also for individual ambassadors and for groups of ambassadors when it's used to its potential. So I'd love to see everybody able to do that. So if you are wanting to join me for that, I know I've got about 8 ambassadors now signed up for that session. Please do. As I say, it's tomorrow evening, 6:30 p.m. The login details are here on the screen. I'll send you this tomorrow morning in an email, or do email me if you don't have these details saved, and join me. And I'll also be doing a quick session at the end of that on social media. For those of you, I've had some requests to do a particular session on how we use social media to raise awareness of 70/30. So I will be doing both. Please do join me if that would be of benefit to you. Okay, to finish this evening, I am going to hopefully successfully show you a fantastic TED Talk by, as I say, our Senior Fellow of Wave Trust, Sir Harry Burns, up here in Scotland. Please do enjoy, and thank you so much, everybody, for joining us again for this evening's call.
Thanks, Sarah.
Can everybody hear?
No sound at all.
There's no sound at all?
Not really. There's a...
Oh dear, we're not having any luck at all with this.
We could look it up ourselves.
Yeah, just send us the link, Sonia.
What I'll do is I'll try it one more time on the YouTube website, and if we have no luck, I will send a link. I know some of you will have to leave now anyway because we're on.
I'm going to say good night because I've seen it and it's very good. So I'll speak to you tomorrow on the tracker training. Good night.
Fantastic. Good night, Anthony. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah,
Bye.
good night all.
Guys, if nobody can hear this link, please do let me know and I'll just stop it. And as I say, I'll chuck it in the email with the minutes. Can you hear that?
No. Sorry.
Okay. I have no idea what the issue is there. I'll have to investigate that further. But guys, as I say, please do have a watch of that. I'll send that with the recording in an email tomorrow morning. And if anybody has anything that they want to share with us following this call, whether it's an idea on our Gloucester project or a fundraising idea or to sign up for the Charity Walk for Peace, please do get in touch with Samurai and we'll support you as best we can. Thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Good night. Good night.
Bye, Sam.